In this video, I would like to introduce to you the historical concept of turning point, or what we also know as watershed. So what is turning point in history? Turning point in history refers to a year or event which caused the period before and after it in a certain country to look very different from each other, usually in terms of politics and society or economics. Also, the changes induced by the point in history has to be long-lasting and caused directly by the events of the year or the historical event itself. Only when these three conditions are being fulfilled, when we can call a certain point in history a turning point, because it caused a fundamental change. So how is a fundamental change different from a usual change? A fundamental change has to be, number one, totally different. So before and after the change should look totally different from each other. Whereas secondly, it has to be long-lasting. The change should not only occur or last for only a short period of time like 1 or 2 years. It has to last for a long time. Let's look at this example over here to clarify what turning point means. When we decide whether a point is a turning point, we need to compare between before, during, and after the point in history. Let's take pregnancy as an example. We all know that pregnant women like sour things. Let's take this example. So these women hate sour food before pregnancy and turns to like sour food during pregnancy, and then turns back to hating sour fruit by the end of the pregnancy period. So is this a turning point in her life in terms of her taste of food? No, because although the change is very obvious from hating to loving sour food, but it does not last very long. It only lasted during the pregnancy period. So it is not a turning point in her life in terms of her taste of food. However, if we change the details a little bit, for example, she remains to like sour food after pregnancy, then we can say perhaps yes, it's a turning point in terms of her taste of food because it is long lasting and it is caused by the pregnancy period, and the change is very obvious from hating to loving sour food during her pregnancy. Let's now take a look at some of the common question types for the concept of turning point. So the first kind of common question types for turning point is that they will ask you to explain how a certain year or event was a turning point to the history of a certain place. This kind of question is relatively straightforward because they already given you a stance, so you just need to explain according to the stance given by comparing how different before and after the turning point was, and then explain how the turning point, the year or event, led to the fundamental changes in the period before and after it. So in this question, you do not need to evaluate or assess anything, you just need to explain changes and how different before and after the turning point was from each other. As for the second kind of question, which is quite common in testing turning point, is to ask you to prove whether a year or event was a turning point in history. This kind of question usually appears in terms of asking you whether you think a year or event was a turning point in history. So in this question, you will need to evaluate by comparing how similar or different before and after the point specified was from each other. So you need to compare before and after the point specified and see how similar or different they are from each other. Then you need to think about whether the change is a fundamental one by seeing whether the difference is very obvious and long-lasting. Also, another point to consider is whether the fundamental change is directly caused by the year or event specified in the question. So if yes, then it is a turning point. If no, then it is not a turning point. So it has to be a yes for both of the questions in green in order to be considered as a turning point in history. If any is no, then it is not a turning point in history. So make sure you are clear in logic when answering questions about turning point. So I will give you a small task. This time, I would like you to interview one of your parents or somebody around you and ask them to specify one year or one event that they think is a turning point in their life. And ask them to explain why they think it is a turning point in their life. And then your next task is to assess whether the year or event chosen by them is really a turning point in their life. So they might choose a year or event which did not lead to a very fundamental change in them. So you will need to try and assess whether the way they explain it or the year they have chosen is really a turning point in their life. So you can refer back to the green questions I've given you just now when considering whether the years chosen or events chosen by your interviewee is really a turning point in their life. So you have 2 tasks for this particular question type. And this is the end of our lesson video. And this video will be uploaded to Google Drive later on. So you can always refer back to this Google Drive for more information. So this is the end of our video. Thank you for watching.